Well, there we are. That music means indeed it is the Sunday sermon moment. And this week I thought I'd focus, probably no surprise, on the migration madness, because we had a situation where some of the asylum seekers, illegal migrants, decided to go on strike. I mean, they've taken some tips and some hints from the trade unions. Yes, indeed, from the rail unions and other unions. So they decided that they'd go on strike outside their central London hotel. They weren't happy with their conditions in that hotel in prime London real estate at our expense. So they moved out and were sleeping on the street with their sleeping bags and all their cases. And I thought I'd go and establish the facts for myself on Friday morning. Bright and early, it was about 7:45. It was fairly chilly. And you may have seen the video if you're on social media, but you may not. So what we've done is I've just sort of pieced together a few elements from the video of my chat with one of the migrants who, called Dia, who spoke good English. And just take a watch or a listen to this.
Another hotel, and this hotel is not good, actually.
So they've come from a hotel in Ilford, Essex. Right. I see. And so, but they don't like this hotel. And why do they not like this hotel?
This hotel is not good, really. You have too much smell and...
Too much smell?
Yeah, and room is very small. They want to...
The rooms are too small?
Yeah. Here it's very bad.
Here's very bad, in the centre of London. Room's very small. Bathroom too small?
Yeah, too much.
I'm so sorry about that. That's really shocking that the bathroom's too small. But do you get nice food here?
Yeah, food is bad.
Food is good. Yeah. So you're happy with the food? That's nice. No phone? No. But you have Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
You have Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi, but...
Wi-Fi, is it good or too... Bad Wi-Fi? Shocking, I'm so sorry. You have bad Wi-Fi? That's not good, is it? If you got bad Wi-Fi. So where was home for you? Where have you come from?
Come from Iraq.
You come from Iraq?
Yeah.
And you've been here how many years?
2 years.
You've been here 2 years, living in Ilford in Essex?
Yeah.
Okay. And who's been paying for you? You get a weekly allowance? The government give you a little bit of weekly money, is that right?
Give £8 for 1 week, and in here, this area, everything is expensive.
Everything's expensive, yes.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about that. It's central London. It's an expensive city. And you've been here 2 years. And who's been paying for this? Government. And who pays the government? It's the British taxpayer. Yeah, so it's all of us. Yeah, so we're all paying. And clearly we need this sorted out. Well, there we are. We do need this sorted out. That is for sure. And that video has now been viewed well over 2 million times on the various social media platforms. And, of course, we live in a democracy, so some have congratulated me and applauded that interview. But also, many have gone absolutely tonto on the left. So while some are congratulating me, saying the cheek of it, complaining at their conditions, many people in the UK would love to live in central London for nothing, for free, and indeed live in a lot worse conditions. But apparently those on the left who went nuts at that interview, they said that I've exploited the gentleman and manipulated him. And what I say to that is utter nonsense. What I've done is highlighted the truth of what they were complaining about and the utter irony of this situation. There we are, centre of London, centre of Pimlico, about half a mile from Westminster. Now, coincidentally, a couple of my friends in the last couple of years have actually stayed in the very same hotel in recent years. And yes, it's a value for money, cheerful hotel, but they said it was perfectly acceptable. And you're not going to get a huge suite of bathrooms in the centre of London. It's a pretty basic fact. So we've exposed everything there in that interview for all to see. What we probably could all agree on, whichever side of this debate you're on, is when the gentleman said that he'd been here for 2 years, living in a hotel, and he hasn't been processed. His case hasn't been dealt with. And yet we've got Rishi Sunak promising to get on top of the battle. How incompetent and utterly useless do you have to be not to be able to deal with someone in 2 years, for heaven's sake. You couldn't make it up. You simply couldn't make it up. And there we are, Rishi Sunak back in December. He promised that by the end of 2023, they would have cleared the backlog, which, when he said that, was about 140, 150,000. The backlog, instead of reducing 6 months later, has now grown by another 30,000 or so. It's about 172,000. So there's that gentleman. He's been here 2 years. He's still waiting. And I give credit to him. He's learnt some decent English. But there's a couple of words that he hadn't quite worked out. Probably would be, I think, helpful to us British taxpayers that are paying the bills. Maybe he should say, and maybe we'd like to hear those simple words: thank you. Thank you for giving me a roof over my head. Thank you for feeding me. Thank you for listening to my case. Yes, you can highlight that it's been a long time waiting for it to be processed. But I think those of us paying the bill, we quite often it's like when if you go out for a meal with someone and you pay the bill, you hope that the other people, they'd say thank you very much. And that's all I think we want. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, it's a bit of a cheek, isn't it? Now, talking of a cheek, I went there later in the day to do a media interview to camera, and there was a bunch of do-gooder lefties there. There were a couple of ladies. There was also a creature, frankly, whose gender I could not identify. It was such an extraordinary sight. But there we are. And they wouldn't allow me to carry out the media interview, no. They stood in my space, abusing me, calling me all sorts of things. And yet when I asked them a simple question like, what was their name? I gave them my name. I told them what I did. They wouldn't even answer their name. They wouldn't answer whether they had a job. They wouldn't answer where they worked. It was about 3:45 in the afternoon. And they said they were on a lunch break. Hang on. Who's on a lunch break at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, for heaven's sake? You might have finished work early, or you might be in work. So I then asked them if they're on benefits. They wouldn't answer that either. What have you got to hide, lady lefties who were on Pimlico on Belgrave Road that day? Why are you so scared of admitting even your name? I then tried to talk to some of the other asylum seekers who are all very hooded up, wearing masks outside. I think, what are they hiding? This lack of transparency, this lack of information. And having been there, I can really understand up and down the country how intimidating it is. And it was pretty, it really was quite a mess. And there were beer bottles all around. And I'm thinking, this really is a shocking scene. Now, I did go into the hotel to talk to the manager to see if I could go and maybe look at the size of the rooms and the bathrooms that were the issue of concern. But the manager wouldn't let me past the front door and the security. Again, all very secretive. And again, I think that worries us. Makes me feel very uncomfortable. What's everybody hiding about this? It's not right. I say, we can all agree. How can it take 2 years to process that gentleman and many of his friends and colleagues' applications? 2 years at our expense, for heaven's sake. So the government now is trying to reduce the cost of it, and that's why this process is happening. They're putting more people in a room. The best way, folks, to reduce the cost is to process the applicants quickly, efficiently, simply. Make a decision, and the vast, vast majority that we all know are economic migrants. Thank them for their application, but say, no, you don't qualify, and therefore you must go back. And I think many millions of people up and down this country who are fuming having watched that video at the lack of gratitude, I think are saying, well, to be honest, if you don't want our hospitality, then please accept someone else's hospitality. Perhaps go back to France. It's a nice, safe country that many of us go on holiday on. Or perhaps back to where you came from, if you don't like our hospitality. I mean, that's where we're getting to with this. it's fair to say that I suspect this sermon has been somewhat different to the sermon from Archbishop Justin Welby. But I suspect that my sermon is much more relevant to millions and millions of people's concerns up and down this country. Because our hospitality is being abused, it's being used to the wrong purposes for a whole variety of reasons, but primarily because of the Home Office's utter incompetence. And yet we learned this week that the civil servants in the Home Office, if the Rwanda scheme gets approved in the Court of Appeal, if they still don't like it, even though it's lawful, legal, then they might go on strike and refuse to carry out the will of the people via the elected representatives who've been appointed ministers. At which point I say, you folks, you're in breach of contract, you're fired, no compensation, you don't pass go, out of a job, go somewhere else. Because the people of this country want this issue sorted. We want to stop the cost. We want to welcome those genuine claims in an appropriate number. But the rest, we've got to stop this nonsense. Completely, utterly absurd. And with that, here endeth my Sunday sermon.